Welcome to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast, and we are here again, as we are here every single Monday through Friday. We're over here for about a half an hour, and that's our podcast to listen to what we have to talk about. Usually, we begin with some kind of a discussion about the first reading, and then it builds from there, and we build whatever from there, see what happens. And you know, I have to tell you, I don't necessarily have shows planned. I mean, I have an idea. Okay, we're going to start with a discussion of the first reading, and then it goes from there. Things come to my mind. Well, maybe I should discuss this. Sometimes I say things that you might say, whoa, I've never thought of it that way, or, well, I don't know if he should have expressed it that way, or whatever, but that's what we do here. Because one of the things we want to be careful of, this is a real serious issue in the faith. Don't take yourself too seriously. And when you listen to some of these programs, take themselves so seriously, and we have to do this. And I had when I was coming back to the church, I was in a parish in Point Loma, California. It was St. Charles Borromeo, still there, school's still open, the whole bit, really great. Unfortunately, the one thing that was sad for me, the church is there, everything's fine. Right across from the church was the Marine Corps Recruit Depot and also Naval Training Center. Well, apparently they're all gone. I guess that's a mall now. Now, you have to understand where this was, which obviously is where the mall is. Let me take a bit of a tangent to kind of illustrate this. If you fly to New York, you actually don't go to New York City. You don't go to Manhattan. You fly to Long Island for JFK, or you fly to New Jersey for LaGuardia, I think it is, or Newark or whatever. But you don't fly into downtown New York. Now, if you want to get to downtown New York, you take a train, and you will literally end up right across the street. It used to be right under, but they moved it. Right across the street from the Madison Square Garden, if you take a train. Or a bus is the same way. Bus will bring you to the Port Authority bus station, which is down on 42nd Street. Yes, indeed, right down there. So you can't fly. And usually you fly into Logan Airport. You don't fly into downtown Boston. You fly into East Boston, right on the edge of the city of Boston, on the other side of the harbor, in fact, from Boston. When you fly into downtown San Diego, you fly right into downtown San Diego. I'm not kidding. It's always been like that. And they used to have to warn people, I don't know if they still do, that as you're flying, you're flying, literally, can you imagine being warned this? And I remember being told this when I first flew into San Diego as a sailor right out of boot camp. And you fly into San Diego and they tell you, by the way, as you fly into San Diego, please don't get nervous. I don't know exactly how they announced it. Words to these effect. Please don't get nervous that it appears we're flying back by buildings. It's perfectly normal when you're flying into downtown San Diego. Absolutely true. And when you fly into downtown San Diego, there is, you go to Logan, right? Because remember, the show comes to you from the Boston area. So you go to Logan, in order to see the planes land, you have to be either somewhere in the airport, obviously not on the runway, or you have to be somewhere else. And usually a lot of people will go over to Castle Island, which is on the other side of Boston Harbor from the airport. So you see the planes come in over the water and land. When you land into downtown San Diego, you're landing, as you're coming in to land on the runway, and the blast guard that they have at the end of the runway, the blast guard is at the corner of a major intersection in San Diego. Absolutely true. So I'm not kidding. When you fly into downtown San Diego, you actually fly into downtown San Diego, and so you're sitting there at this intersection, and a plane flies right over. I mean, not like flies about 10,000 feet over. Oh, look, the plane up in there. No. Oh, look, there's a plane that looks like it's going to land right on our roof. But it doesn't. It goes a little bit further. So anyway, that's a story when we want to talk about different aspects of, this whole thing. So there you are at the corner. I forget what the two streets were, but the corner of these two streets on the exact opposite side of the airport. So you're in this place, think of, the exact opposite side, similar situation, was the Marine Corps Recruit Depot. And also Naval Training Center. And so if you were assigned to Naval Training Center, one of your duties, which would be interesting, was interesting considering you just landed there to get there, one of your duties, if you were on the schedule, was to be on, I don't know what they called it, the airplane crash patrol. So that means, as a Navy sailor, being there for your fellow citizens in the United States of America, if a plane crashed, you had to go to the crash site to rescue people. That was your job, which fortunately I never had to do. I was on the crash patrol. Well, right across the street from the Marine Corps Recruit Depot, when it was there, which is still there, still in the same place, St. Charles Borromeo Parish. And that's where I came back to church. Wonderful place. I've told them that I've mentioned them on the podcast many times. I never got back to me, but wonderful place. Really enjoyed it. And there was a priest there who always spoke gently from the altar. And it's interesting, I think of that, because he was very inspirational, but I can't remember any of his homilies, except for one. And he always, and I just say, oh, remember that. I enjoyed his homilies, but I can't remember anything. So in any case, he always spoke very gently, very spiritual. And the only homily I remember is the only time he ever yelled from the pulpit, which for him wouldn't seem very loud, but for like anyone else, you go, well, he wasn't really yelling. For him, you knew he was yelling. The only time I ever heard him yell from the pulpit was, "Don't take yourself too seriously." So that's an important distinction, right? So that's what we try not to do. Now, I can get very excited about some of what we're teaching, but you're not going to find me say, well, you have to, whatever, and you better be careful because at any point, if you do the wrong thing, you're not going to hear me say that, because I'm going to always teach about this relationship with Jesus Christ and also coming to know Christ and trusting in the Lord, even though that's something we have to learn, which I'm always learning. And so that's where I'm going to come. And for those of you who might be listening, say, we as Catholics don't believe in having a relationship with Jesus Christ. You better study your Catholicism. And why don't you read anything by Cardinal Sarah? He brings it up all the time. So always keep that in mind. So anyway, so all that to tell you, don't take yourself too seriously. That's important. Okay. That's one of the things so that's the action we're going to go. Now, we've been following Exodus all along, and today we're going to take a little diversion because today is a feast. Today is the feast of St. Mary Magdalene, so the readings change. If you have a memorial, you have an option of having a reading specifically for the memorial or the reading series as they've been going along, and the preferred is, unless you really want to focus on the memorial, you can still say the prayers of memorial and keep the readings. The preferred is to keep the readings, the continuity of the readings. That liturgically is preferred. However, when you have a feast or a solemnity, everything changes. So we're going to look at a whole different reading because, first of all, we want to focus on St. Mary Magdalene. Here's the funny thing about St. Mary Magdalene. What is it that people always think about? And there are other people saying, oh, that's not true. You got that wrong. What is it? That she, will say, lived a very worldly, earthly life prior to encountering Jesus. You always hear that when she was converted, but she changed and the whole bit. You never hear her biggest claim to fame. The first person to spread the gospel. Did you know that, St. Mary Magdalene? It's right in the Gospels. Mary was told to go tell the apostles that Jesus rose from the dead. She was the first one to spread the good news. And in case you didn't figure that out from her name, she's a woman. It's fascinating. It's really true. That's a very powerful thing. Well, if that's the case, why can't women be priests? Everyone thinks it's all about equality. It's not. It's something very different. And I learned that because I've worked with the Latino community, Spanish speakers and Portuguese speakers. And you learn very quickly that the women have a very powerful role in the church. And if you think about it, the Hispanic communities, I should say the Latino communities, that means the Brazilians will always say we're not Latinos, we're Brazilians. Okay, whatever. And then the Hispanic communities from Latin America and also in other countries, they always had a shortage of priests. So the lay people play an important role always with the way it should be. And the women among the lay people always play an important role. So it's a supplemental role. And that's wise. Why can't women be priests? Because it's not a matter of the priest is superior. It's a supplemental role. And when you look at the way the role of women in other countries in the church, you will see it's a very powerful supplemental role. And I'm always teaching that to what I like to say, the North American community. By the way, remember, North America is Mexico, which already follows that model, Mexico, United States, and Canada. So, but I always try to teach that because if you look, the women play as serious a role as the male priesthood. And that's why, and you can say, well, then women should be priests. Then you're going to lose that very specific role, which is absolutely essential to the ministry in the church. And we can see that. Who was the first one to spread the gospel? Mary Magdalene. There's a reason for that. We're going to talk more on the other side of the break. We'll be right back right after this. You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. 617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try. 617-297-7452, 617-297-7452. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out, patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. You know, all the programs that appear on your favorite podcast platform actually have already been on Patreon for several days, maybe even a week. Do you know that? Yes, indeed. So if you want to hear a preview and even make comments and say, oh, I don't know about this, feel free, sign up. Just go over to patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media, and thank you to all who have already done so. So here we are. And so we're talking about this powerful moment. By the way, that goes until the end of July. Oh, the free, you sign up and you are a Premier member, so even though you won't have to pay, it's automatically free for... if I decide to go to a paid membership, you will be still, because you're a Premier member, that begins, or that offer ends the 31st of July. So anyway, let's move on. So we are looking at this powerful story of St. Mary Magdalene. So remember, she was the very first to spread the gospel. because she was told by Jesus to go out and tell the apostles that Jesus has risen from the dead. And as a matter of fact, the words to Jesus are the words from Jesus to her are exactly this: "Go to my brothers and say to them, I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." That's the version from the New American Bible Revised New American Bible Revised Edition, which is what is used at Mass. So she was the one who went out to preach the gospel first. So anyone said, well, it's only the role of the priest to preach the gospel. Only the men can do it. Where did you get that? It was the woman who was the first to preach the gospel. And that's an important distinction, because that's the role that we all have. It reminds me of a story. This is very common in South America. I think I might have told you the story, but many people may haven't heard it in any case. And I remember someone telling me a long time ago, it says, this was Pope John, it shows you how long ago it was. Pope John Paul II was only appointing conservative, that's her word, that's what she was complaining, conservative bishops. And I said, let me explain something to you. In Latin America. Let me explain something to you. So we had to go to what is known as a recinto, and it was a community. So in order to get there, we, of course, in South America, there were all these laws. None of them are followed. So they maybe have a law against sitting in the back of a pickup truck, but it's not followed. Everyone sits in the back of the pickup truck. So we're in the back of the pickup truck. And I could tell you a story about that. So in the back of a pickup truck, I tell you a story about another set of laws not followed. So we're in the back of a pickup truck. We're going about 45 minutes of a ride on a tar road. Then we get off the tar road. We turn off the tar road in the truck, and we go. I remember telling this story a couple of weeks ago. So anyway, same story. So we get on a dirt road. And then we get out of the truck. We have to walk down this path with these large blades of grass. 20 feet high blades of grass. Then we get to a creek. We get in a boat, cross the creek. We get on the other side of the boat. We climb up, walk down more of a path surrounded by these large blades of grass. You're expecting these big ants to come out from the movie Them. And then we end up in a scene that looks like from the movie South Pacific, which in fact, Ecuador, if you're below the equator, is in the South Pacific. So looks like South Pacific. And I said to her, I told her the whole story. And I said, how often do you think the bishop gets there? And she's like, well, very rarely. I said, I know. I said, that's the point. The point is the conservative bishops are to draw everyone to the middle ground, so they can be very strict, but without them, that things would be, it go the other way. So to keep everything towards the middle, I said, that's why the bishops were mostly conservative. Now, of course, this is South America, and one of the issues down there that Pope John Paul was struggling with was liberation theology, and I've studied that. I know liberation theology very well. I am not a liberation theologian, but that's a story for another time. So, in any case, this was the role of St. Mary Magdalene, the very first to preach the gospel. And one of the things that I've often taught people when it comes to the role of women in the church, I said, you got to realize the apostles are there. And among the apostles are like Mary, the mother of God, St. Mary Magdalene, obviously Our Lady, and the St. Mary Magdalene. And these women, there were these women who were at the cross. Remember, when all the apostles ran away, the women stayed, and only one apostle stayed. That was John. The women stayed. They didn't go anywhere. And so I said, do you actually think that the apostles said at the time, when they were with the mother of Jesus, Mary Magdalene and all these people who also knew Jesus and were very close to him, do you actually think they said, well, she's a woman, so we're not going to pay attention to her? Yeah, but that's Mary, his mother. Well, yeah, but she's a woman. We're not going to pay any attention to her. Do you actually think that the apostles really said that? I can assure you they never did that. In fact, if they did do that, we would not be celebrating the Assumption of Mary. The Assumption of Mary, the Eastern Church calls it the Dormition, but the Assumption of Mary is related to the Dormition, rather. The Assumption of Mary is that Mary is assumed into heaven, body and soul, because she's the mother of Jesus. She lived a sinless life. She was filled with grace so that she could bring Jesus to birth and all of that. She was the new Eve, so she was assumed body and soul. Well, the only reason why we know that, if you think about it, is because she was so highly respected within the community that they knew when she died, and they knew that her body disappeared. That's the whole story. Her body, it wasn't that she was walking on the earth 3 days later. Her body disappeared because she was assumed body and soul into heaven. So you see that. Okay, they wouldn't have known that or even cared if their whole attitude was, well, she's a woman. We don't pay attention to women. And by the way, just for your information, that's one of the reasons why the Gospel of Thomas, as I understand, never made it into the canon. Because, you can get the Gospel of Thomas, right? They sell that and everything else. Well, find one of the books of the Bible that the church wouldn't allow into the Bible. Learn what's being said there. Well, it's believed that the Gospel of Thomas was not accepted into the Bible, but was used as a part, like it was, in a sense, I hate to use the word, but I will, cannibalize to help write the other Gospels. Well, there's a line in it's like the last line or the second last line, saying that unless a woman becomes a man, she cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. That's a ridiculous teaching. We don't believe that. That's not church teaching. So you can see, obviously, why the Gospel of Thomas never ended up in the canon, because it had literally that attitude I just said they wouldn't have. Well, she's a woman, so we're not going to listen to what she says. Yeah, but that's Mary, the mother of Jesus. Well, I don't care who it is. I don't care if she's the mother of God. That is the mother of God, you clown. Oh, you understand? Right? There's no way people would think like that at the time. So that's why it just didn't make any sense for that to end up in the Bible as canon. And so that's one of those books. These are the lost books of the Bible. No, they're not lost. We always know they existed. It's just they have decided that they're not canon. That means they're not accepted as being inspired by the Holy Spirit. So that's a little bit of background there. But remember, that's who Saint Mary Magdalene is. And you can think of that. You can put that whole thing together, and you can understand that the apostles would have drawn all the information they could, all the wisdom they could from Mary, the mother of Jesus, and St. Mary Magdalene, and all the rest. They would have listened. Can you imagine just asking them, what do you think your son meant when he said X, Y, and Z? Well, I know my son really well, and I can tell you what he meant. And all this stuff would have been fascinating for them, and the women would have played an important part. But Jesus did not appoint the women as apostles. He did appoint them as evangelizers. Do you understand the difference? So he didn't appoint them as apostles. that doesn't mean the women have a lower role. It is a different role. And that's an important distinction. And that's why it really bothers me when people say, well, women should be ordained because of equality. You're missing the point. It's not about equality. It's, as a matter of fact, if you say to a woman, we'll let you become priest, you're calling them to a step down. That it's not about equality, but it's not about the priest is more superior than the woman. If anything, it's the other way around. Let me give you an example. This is one of the examples I always give. You're watching the TV news, and whatever news station, we'll call it We're Not Fake News, okay? Because I don't watch TV news that much anymore. It's just long story, don't get into it. But We're Not Fake News. So you've got the anchor person, we'll call him an anchor man because he'll be a man, that's an important part, and he'll be giving you the news. Now, we all know that he may be the executive producer of the news. Usually the network guys are also the executive producers. He may have written some of the stories ahead of time. Other people wrote stories, and he may have even decided what stories he wants to read first. He may not have. It usually is a team. But we'll put that whole thing in there. So he's got his teleprompter in front of him. The news show comes on the air. He starts speaking the news. Who's in charge of that broadcast? Oh, it's obviously the anchorman. No, it is the producer in the control room. That's the role of women in the church. If you understand the role of women in the church, they are equivalent to the producer in the control room. You know that whole thing, you won't get something done, ask a woman. The women come together to say, this is what we need, this is how we need to do the whole bit. If you don't have the women in the church, if you just say, the only thing you're there to do is to show up, don't do anything else, you will never have a thriving parish. It's an important key. It's extremely important to understand that. We'll be back right after this. You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. 617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try. 617-297-7452, 617-297-7452. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at CatholicAudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out. Patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. And we're back. And don't forget that offer to be part of Patreon, the Patreon list, and it won't cost you anything if I ever start to charge, goes right up until the 31st of July. Now, I'm not going to charge starting in August. I'll tell you that right now. But I just want to, if I start to charge, eventually, as a subscription fee, you won't be included if you sign up now. So in any case, we are looking at this powerful message. Now, I know I told you, I don't really plan out these podcasts. I just begin them. Same thing with my interviews, by the way. I used to do that. I used to sit, okay, I'll ask this question, and then we'll do this. Never happens, because you end up with the conversation, and the conversation goes where the conversation goes. And you don't control that part, because it's just the nature of it. And if you do, then you kind of lose a sense of that spontaneity. Well, I had planned to talk about the second reading, and we never got to that because we were focused on who Mary Magdalene actually is. So we'll talk about the second reading when that comes up again, because remember, we go back to the original continuity tomorrow back in Exodus, but the readings changed for today because it's the feast of St. Mary Magdalene. So there we go. That's just the way it goes liturgically. It's kind of like a special, like you're watching TV. It's your favorite show comes on, then all of a sudden we're going to have a special of, let's watch, let's learn about salamander watching this week in this special broadcasting. Well, I'm missing my show for salamander watching. Well, that's kind of what happens, except it's always exciting when you're talking about the saint that we're actually celebrating. We'll be back tomorrow. In the meantime, have yourself a blessed day.